Today I'm unpacking Waiting to Exhale. Watching this film as an adult was crazy because as a kid I always looked up to these characters. But when I looked at their flaws and character traits, I was like, they kind of toxic. All of them was sleeping with married men except Loretta Devine. And Bernadine's husband left her for a white woman, and then she turns around and sleeps with 2 married men herself. Herbert from the club, who turned out to be a lightweight stalker, and James Wheeler Snipes, who was married to a dying white lady. And even though Bernadine had all that going on, it was Robin who was by far the most toxic. She was fucking on the heavyset guy, but talking shit about him to us. Then when he asked her what she wanted, she gonna say a house in Scottsdale, marriage, 2 to 3 kids, going out to eat 2 to 3 times a week. And I'm just trying to figure out, how does she get there? Because I think a much better answer would have been something like a real nice purse or some shoes. Because committing your life to somebody you barely even love, like, or want to fuck, then introducing kids into the mix, getting property together, it's just irresponsible, especially to plan out. Then Robin started messing with leather-wearing in the summertime Troy, who she only knew for 3 days, and who also did cocaine. Now, the drug usage was obviously an issue, but what was really insulting was the way he tried to hide the lines on the table with his hand. Like, just look at my hand, ain't nothing behind there. Just look at my hand, as if she was a toddler. And you know what? In some ways, maybe she was, because at some point he stole her wallet and she didn't seem to care. I'm watching this like, bitch, you don't want to go look for your wallet? It's your wallet. And even after all that, she still agreed to go meet his mama and 13-year-old son that he just told her about. The only reason she didn't go is because he showed up 2 hours late and drunk. And I appreciate Robin's growth because apparently that was her boundary point. I know some women who still would have went to go meet his mama and them even after all of that. And one of those women was a past version of me. I know, terrible, right? But thank God for healing. Side note, it's crazy how Troy cussed out Robin just because she held him accountable for being 2 hours late. He literally said, that's the problem with you black bitches. And I'm like, what's the problem with us black bitches? We won't let you be 2 hours late and drunk? And why would he even want her to meet his mom and son if she's so bad? I mean, how would the introduction go? Mom, son, I want you to meet this black bitch. Then there was Russell and her keeping the baby. I see why they call it Waiting to Exhale. So anyway, back to Bernadine. On the outside, it looked like she had all her shit together. But if you look real close, she was kind of volatile. And I understand considering the circumstance. But if me and Bernadine was friends, I would really try to be the voice of reason and just say, sis, you cannot burn other people's property. That's a felony. Maybe wipe dog shit on one of his good shoes and then pack it all up, put it in the garage and let him figure it out. But don't potentially put yourself in trouble just because you mad at him. And for goodness sakes, you cannot slap another woman just because she took your man. Like, slapping another bitch is just something you say you gonna do when you mad. Like, I slapped that hoe, but you don't really do it. A better option would be like fucking one of his friends and then ghosting them both. I'm kidding about that, but it's a far better choice than a possible assault charge. I'm surprised security didn't drag her out. Another side note, when I was watching this, I realized that even though these characters were deeply flawed and the stories were kind of fucked up, it wasn't given a heavy whiff of toxicity. Like, I could barely taste the toxicity because everything was so beautiful. Like, you know how you can taste the toxicity in Baby Boy, even though it's also beautifully done, you definitely recognize that behavior to be problematic. Well, I didn't know the characters from Waiting to Exhale were that kind of toxic until recently. I never knew. And I think it was the fact that they casted 4 of the most likable women, set in Arizona with the most gorgeous scenery, and accompanied by some of the dopest music. For example, the scene where Bernadine was in bed and it was raining and her daughter brings her the mail and there's a letter from James Wheeler Snipes. Well, that letter was completely off the chain. But because it was raining and soft music was playing and her daughter was, in her jewelry box being all cute, the vibe was sweet and soft. But that letter basically read, Dear Bernadine, even though you didn't let me hit, I still love you and I still love my wife because I'm a good guy. Isn't that great how that works? Maybe in a few months you'll let me fuck for real, for real. Love, James Wheeler Snipes. And I know it was probably very honest and genuine, but it's still disrespectful and insensitive towards his marriage. Because what if the wife found that letter? She would have every right to go off on him and she might even call him a nigga. I know I would. I honestly think Loretta Devine had the most sense out of all of them. She gave the most helpful advice. She had her shit together, owned her own salon, her own house, and she was thick, goals. She let her son go off to Spain and even got a man out of the deal. A good man, Savannah. Speaking of Savannah, You know, Savannah really was trying because she knew that affair was trash, but it was her mother who was encouraging it. Gratefully, Savannah was brave enough to uphold boundaries with her mom. Not the why don't you fucking marry him then, mom part. That was funny, but it was disrespectful. I'm talking about the I have a job that I love, I have friends, I have a life, and I'd rather focus on that than be a sneaky link just to say I got a man. That part. And I know her mom came from a different time, but I think it's imperative that incoming generations are intentionally trying to improve beyond what worked for their parents' generation. Because if I'm not mistaken, the Allstate man's wife can fight. And we don't want Savannah to get her ass whooped just because her mama put her in a sticky situation. Additionally, and I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say this, but I think Savannah's mom might have been dealing with a married man herself because she seemed to not care at all about him being a married man. It seemed to be way more important to her that he was a good man. And I think the term good man back then meant he got a good job and he don't hit women. Her mother basically says, so what if he got a wife? Fuck her, just don't end up like me. And I can only assume she said that because she felt incomplete herself or not good enough without a man herself and didn't want her daughter to experience that loneliness too. It's a pretty complex dynamic, yet still very pervasive even today. But I like how Savannah was willing to chill and enjoy her life while waiting for the relationship that she really wants. Final side note. When Savannah came to visit Bernadine, she told her, you know, some of us are still on that dream trip, girl. I initially thought she was talking about a job, but she also could have been talking about her love life because she was willing to lose her side chick status in order to receive her dream relationship instead. And in the scene by the fire pit, it's such a pretty shot. They asked each other were they scared and they both said yeah. And if don't nobody else get that, I get it. Reinvention, transformation, pivoting, starting over, all that shit is scary. Whether it's healing, going after a dream, or both. And I think they all did that really well. It was really beautiful to watch. Waiting to Exhale has become my new favorite movie. And this film is almost 30 years old. So for it to still be able to have that effect, I think it's really dope. Despite all the toxicity, it was still very entertaining with a feel-good ending. Even Tariq's dad ended up owning a multi-million-dollar company in Albuquerque. Everybody grew.